The sheer number of human vessels that had arrived in system amazed, shocked, but didn't confuse anyone more than humans actually arriving to aid and not conquer. Usually a fleet like this is only there to conquer and absolutely nothing else. Because of their aid, the humans were getting all sorts of thanks, as the Slithers and Hounds were extremely grateful as the rebuilding began. A dozen colony worlds needed complete reconstructed. These range from ago worlds, paradise worlds, mining colonies, a new living colony, even hostile worlds that were just being used as staging areas or refueling points. This all had to be redone, as whatever these pirates had done, they were a bit more efficient than you would think. When the humans land on any planet, they offload machinery and personnel extremely efficiently and immediately get to work, focusing on infrastructure first to make sure that basic hygiene, travel, and things of that nature are taken care of. The next to take care of is the spaceport. If they can get the spaceport completed, that means supplies and personnel can move in faster and faster, which speeds things up a whole lot quicker. Lodging is originally temporary, nothing than what the humans call tents, changed up to something they call housing unit. Strange things, usually just only having a bed and a little bit of control over the temperature. These strange metal pieces were only about 2 meters by 4 meters, but it was enough to house people for a while. Pretty soon, permanent structures would be made, though, and this would be something that everyone was looking forward to, as they realized that they were getting close to the final phase of rebuilding. Self-sustainment. This meant fields, food, and bringing in the fauna. Unfortunately, in a few cases, they actually had to clone animals just to have enough there. The hounds are strictly carnivorous, with very few exceptions in their diets. This wasn't so much for the Slithers, but the Slithers prefer, well, grubs and insects over anything else. They almost never eat any type of vegetation, which meant that they needed some sort of protein, and a lot of it for the population. Not just for the population to sustain itself, but also to grow, but also to recover. Many were injured, damaged almost beyond recognition, but thankfully, human medical care has advanced to a point that many of the other species thought it was almost magic. Many of the humans laughed, and they would always be asked, "What are you laughing about?" Nothing. Just the old phrase of magic and technology being so similar. Everyone looked and realized that if the doc is using something like he was using then, maybe it was a magic wand. Though no one understood why the humans, every time they were asked, "Is that your magic wand?" the humans would stop and say, "Oh no, this isn't my magic wand. My magic wand is secured somewhere else. Somewhere south." Nobody ever understood what that meant, but the humans seemed to laugh a lot about it. The incredible efficiency of the recovery efforts made everybody stunned and immediately started asking where the humans learned to do this so well. They were informed that there's hostile areas around Sol that need to be terraformed, everything from hunks of rock to almost livable planets, but everything had to be done. They had plenty of practice. By the time they had completely finished the spaceport, which is a massive project, even by human standards, the entire planet is pretty much self-sustainable at that point, and humans didn't really stick around unless they were given a reason to. This effort was pretty straightforward, but the space stations, they were another ball of wax altogether. Considering they're just floating there in the void of space, usually next to something very hard, as in a rogue comet that they're trying to harvest from, they need to be very careful in what they do. The first thing that needs to be done is a complete structural assessment. Every bolt, every wire, every bulkhead, everything need to be checked. And if it was seen to be not salvageable, well, there was a simple solution. They built another one right next to it and used the old one as spare parts. If it was salvageable, The salvage ships would move in close and tether themselves to the space station itself. This allowed everybody to work without things suddenly just moving sideways really quick and hurting everybody inside. The systematic repairs always, without exception, always started with whatever power plant it was. This could take a while depending on the type of power plant, because sometimes you had to bring in specialists for it. No two species use the exact same type. Close, perhaps, but not the same. They were actually glad that they didn't have to use a microstar to keep these things going, because nobody liked working around those things. A little too volatile. Many of the species that owned these stations always wanted their own crew quarters to be taken care of, but understood that the human efficiency meant that they worked from the core to the exterior and no other way. They also learned that they need to pressure check everything twice. They learned this the hard way, as one of the bulkhead doors actually gave way and almost cost a few of the hounds their lives. Thankfully, the quick thinking of a few humans kept them alive, but they listened close after that. As the humans continued to work on the stations, many of the slithers and hounds were actually amazed as they were being improved upon whenever possible. It seemed as though the humans would constantly be checking in. Can I adjust this? Can I adjust that? Can I make this more efficient? Usually it was immediately responded with, why haven't you done that already? Which was strange. Everybody knew you had to ask permission from your senior, of course. Once everything was done, they simply disconnected the ships from the station and went on their way. The hounds and slithers were extremely grateful for all this, but they did worry about one thing. They worried about what the humans may ask in for return. But when they did ask this right in front of the cameras, they got, don't worry about it yet. We have more pressing issues, or have you forgotten? Deep inside the galactic core, the Galactic Senate debates the current situation. They blame the hounds and slithers for the unrest in their own territories, as they're trying to explain to families how their own people suddenly got overrun by a bunch of hairless monkeys. Annoyed, the blame goes back to the Senate from the slithers and hounds for protecting the pirates and making sure they had a way to sell whatever they stole. As they went back and forth, suddenly everyone was silenced as they all got alerted on their devices that the humans had arrived. Unfortunately for most, this was unannounced and they were not ready. They all worried and waited impatiently as the human ship went right by the dome, basically to show itself off. This semi-sleek but kind of boxy device just seemed to move past and gracefully get in position and dock itself. They waited, and they heard the sounds of footfalls in the halls, and eventually the door opened up. Everyone turned to look, but only two different species stood in the standard level of respect when a new species entered. The human group that walked in consisted of 7 humans in similarly dressed suits. All but one was actually holding what the humans refer to as a briefcase. Everybody wanted to figure out why makes it a quick case. Is it quick to deploy, or what is it? Normally, the incoming species needs to stop and address the hall when entering, and then walk forward and thank the council with a token of tribute before they even walk into the central area. Then when they do, they must prostrate themselves to the Senate for the ability to dress them. Be grateful just to be in the Senate's presence. That is what they expected. Once this is done, it is normal for a vote cast to see if the new species was even allowed to speak to them. Then and only then are they allowed to be heard, and at any point, if their words are displeasurable to anyone in the Senate, anyone in the Senate could speak over them, halting their words, and if they will not stop and listen to their betters speak, they are ordered to leave. The humans, however, simply walked straight forward, not turning their heads, not looking around, not giving thanks, not doing anything, but simply walked to the center of the room without hesitation. They stopped and seemed to form a circle facing out, but only one human spoke. We are the representatives of humanity. Most of you are wondering why we have forgone your tradition of submission before this council. The reason is simple. After examining the actions taken by the pirate forces, as he raised his hands to kind of emphasize that, it is clear that they were far better trained, organized, and definitely armed than they should be. Since our forces have taken the pirate vessels, at least what's left of them, intact, we found out who they really were. This was also confirmed by the very few prisoners we were able to take alive. At this point, the humans all reach into their breast pocket, pull out devices, walk out to the side, and place them next to different devices in front of species. The devices then seem to open up by themselves and begin to mix their way into the devices. Then they sent out a strange tone, a chime, acknowledging that they uploaded everything complete. The human spoke again. We have confirmed that 86% of the so-called pirates that were attacking these two species, they were actually members of, or former members of, your own militaries. The Senate is a bit in shock, a few confused, others being silent, and a few having their eyes, however many sets they actually have, seem to open wide and then calm themselves before the human continued. In addition, these personnel were mainly taken from your own penitentiaries and sent to perform the most egregious acts. At that, he simply turned over and looked at the images coming up. Many shudder at the images and videos going across the screens of their devices, and no matter how they try to log out, the images just keep going. The same images are also projected on the walls as a 3D rendering is right above the humans. This way, they could not look away without putting their heads down, which is a universal sign of shame and surrender. The human continues with, it is clear that to remove the criminal elements from your territories, you all simply force them into other territories. These two species have been the only ones that have been kind to us, allowed us to travel through their territory without being molested, traded with us. They have become friends to humanity. Something many of you have heard and seen is how we humans can pair or pack bond with others. There are different titles, you could say, that we give this. It may be brother, lover, buddy, or anything like that. But for this situation, we call them allies. We call them friends. When we first were able to reach beyond the walls that surrounded our world, they were the first to show a fledgling species any concern. When our colonies were in danger of collapse due to food shortages or outbreaks or what have you, they gave us assistance. Even something as simple as relaying a message of distress so that we could go save our people is enough. For that, we have repaid our debt. Yet we have discovered that the pirate forces you created were simply supposed to weaken our allies, to punish them for siding with us, making it impossible to aid us as you plan to attack humanity as a whole. He took a breath a little bit before he continued, just to let that sink. We first heard the phrase, damn humans, a long time ago, and we thought it was a metaphor. We mistakenly believed that it would be the same context that we would use it. We were wrong. You called to damn us back to Earth as though you tried to push the oceans of the planet into a narrow sea. This could only be accomplished if you evaporate all the other oceans, leaving the narrow sea itself. We understand what you mean now. We see you. We see you for what and who you really are. From this moment further, humanity disavows this Senate and all the species within it. Those that desire to join us are welcome at this moment. We understand that you have those plans to damn us. Our final message before we leave is simple. Don't try it. With this, he simply turns, motions, and they all go to leave. The hounds and slithers immediately get up to join them. Surprising, one other species goes to join them. This species is what the humans call dragons. A reptilian species with wings, kind of walks like a lizard too. Normally walks on all fours, but can easily stand up on two limbs and manipulate the front paws, just like hands. In actuality, they have 6 digits, which makes it easy to manipulate things. Their charcoal black scales are actually mostly smooth, not a spike among them, which surprisingly makes them very fun to pet. And though they are very xenophobic as a species, as they keep to themselves, they can see the writing on the wall, as they only have 2 sectors for themselves. Even though they keep their borders very secure, these borders do go right against the slithers and human territories. As this group reaches the door, another species stands up and stands in their way. A simple description is a Sasquatch on steroids. Stands there. You will not defy us. I will crush you here and now if you do not return and submit to our rule. The moment they said that, without hesitation, those with heavy briefcases seemed to press a button, open them up, and slap them against their chest, reaching their arms in, stretching them out. As they extended all the way out, the metal exoframe extended all the way down their body and closed up. Within a few seconds, they looked like medieval knights as they stood proud and defiant in the face of this beast. The dragon representatives immediately shuddered, and a small bit of fire came out of their mouths as they were now looking at the demons of their path, standing only a tail's length away. The fear made them freeze in place as the other species seemed to smile in the group, in their own way, that is. They looked at this giant squatch and simply grinned. The furry giant simply stood defiant as the humans began to walk again, seemingly ready to either walk around or right through him. The furry tried to grab the first human, and immediately found himself grabbed by the hand. He didn't have time to close his hand, as suddenly he was just picked up and thrown over the human's shoulder. They didn't let go of the hand, as they seemed to purposely slam him spine first into the deck. This made the room shake with the impact. Yet everybody suddenly realized it wasn't the sound of the body hitting the deck that made everybody wince. No, it was the sudden loud crack as 2 of the fingers were snapped over 90 degrees in the absolute wrong direction. This made the furry simply scream in pain as it stood there on its knees holding its busted up hand. As the big furry just sat there on his knees, basically crying, holding his hand. The armored humans continued to walk, making sure they stayed in front to make sure that everybody parted away from their group. The one non-armored human turned, almost seemingly bowing to the other ones and extending his hand, and offers the dragons, the slithers, and the hounds to follow. Everyone did, but the dragons did hesitate. The human said, No need to tie your tail in a knot. We're friends now, are we not? The dragons thought for a moment and then followed without any more hesitation, slowly calming their hearts as they walked, as they were absolutely scared to death of what they had just seen. Within a few minutes, each respective ship lifted off without any further incidents. Inside the Senate, video was still playing on a loop and they just couldn't get it to stop. They began to discuss the defiance of the humans, how they had to be brought to heel, how they had to be stopped. They worry with the truth was going to come out. They knew they couldn't hide this anymore. All the politicians that were in there, of course, did what they do best. Try to save their political hides when everything goes to shit. Eventually, they did get on track and asked what they were going to do about the humans. The debate went back and forth, but only for a little while. The realization that the human fleet is actually away from human territory spiked their interest. Many believe that a direct attack on Earth would actually force the humans to the bargaining table due to sheer demoralization, if nothing else. They believe this would be the best way to do it, and they will be able to conquer the humans without losing too many. Most agreed to this, surprisingly, that it would be the best course of action. Then suddenly an insectoid rose, fluttered their wings, and let out a screech to make everybody know that they needed to speak. The appearance of this insectoid was almost human in appearance, surprisingly, except for some wings and a little bit of extra shell parts along with an extra set of arms. Just about screeching, it said, "Are you all insane? Have you not studied their history? This will only bring their wrath down upon us all with unknown ferocity. This has happened before in their history." Another species represented stood up as well. This one looked like some sort of demon by human eyes. The ram horns wrapping all the way back behind his head was something that stuck out the most. That is, if you avoid the deep blue of his form as he stands tall. Though he is missing wings, it would be easy to confuse him for the devil's own. "My chitta counterpart is correct. Even if you are successful, the humans will throw themselves without fear or hesitation at the face of death simply for revenge. You will not stop to collect your trophies. They won't do it either, as the only trophies that they want is the mountain of corpses that will be in their wake." The insectoid spoke again. "My tiefling counterpart is correct. If you go into human space, you will find mass drivers behind every piece of space debris. If the Council is to go forward with this plan, then they will go and do so without us." The chitter turns and leaves, with the tiefling trailing pretty close behind. After a few moments, one more species got up out of their seat and leaves without a word. This small species the humans call the halflings. This species takes a lot of heat due to their stature and the fact that they can't actually fight very well, even though they're surprisingly durable if you bounce them around a little bit. Just as she's about to reach the door, the halfling ambassador turns and looks a little bit to see the big ape still holding his broken hand, and without breaking a stride, she simply smiles a bit and walks out. Aboard the human ship, there's a holographic meeting going on with all the species that had just left, at least in the initial group. The slithers, the hounds, the dragons, and the humans. The humans spoke, saying, "Well, looks like the lines have been drawn all right. We can agree that the species that left the Senate Changer are neutral in the upcoming conflict. Is everybody agreed on this?" They all immediately did so. The Slither spoke up. "I'm impressed that you thought about leaving at least a few of those devices behind to record them. How did humans get so adept at espionage?" Let's just say we have plenty of practice." The dragon spoke. "How can humans do such a thing without giving away intentions?" The man just smiled and said, "We are very, very sneaky." Now, we actually need to talk a bit more about reconsolidation. Now that we have a lot more territory to cover, I mean, we have 4 different species here, and we got to worry about our neutral buddies too, because they might catch some shit. So we need to discuss movement, placement of personnel, and equipment to be... He's cut off as an alarm begins going off. They all check their devices, and the Admiral simply goes, "Holy shit, already?" Hello everybody, this is Syntax. Thank you so much for joining me on today's chapter. Before I go, I gotta send out a couple of thank you to some of my supporters. Those would be Ava Clark and Erica Gem. Thank you so much for supporting the channel. Everybody else, I'll see you on the next one. This is Syntext ejecting.